Good evening, good day, and welcome to Lake Monticello Broadcast Group coverage of the LMOA Board of Directors election to be decided at the 52nd annual meeting of the association on Saturday, June 29. This candidates forum is intended as an opportunity for the community to ask questions of the candidates and to judge their responses in relation to each other's. First, the format for the candidates. Each candidate will give an opening statement of no more than 3 minutes. We will then pose questions submitted in advance by the membership. Questions are screened to avoid the personal, the hostile, or the inappropriate. Candidates will be alerted to complete their answers after 90 seconds. Rebuttals and re-rebuttals of 90 seconds will be allowed at the discretion of the moderator. We invite the candidates to comment on each other's answers. Your dialogue is encouraged. Following the question period of up to an hour, the candidates will have up to 3 minutes each for a closing statement. We have been asked to inform you, lest there be any doubt, that the opinions expressed by the candidates represent their own views and not those of LMOA or the broadcast group. The same holds true for the questions. Emails and postcards with voting instructions will be sent on May 28. Members in good standing who have opted in to receive the ballot electronically will be able to vote immediately on May 28 using the link provided in an email from Election Buddy. The postcards will have an access code on them for online voting online or for picking up a paper ballot at the main desk. Staff at the main desk are also able to assist with online voting. Voting will end on June 21, and the annual meeting will start at 10 a.m. on Saturday, June 29. There will be no in-person voting. The board urges property owners to read the annual meeting notice thoroughly when it arrives and to make an informed decision that protects the future of LMOA. The board of directors is asking for a $150 dues increase that will go into reserves annually to replenish those funds. Now let's meet the 4 candidates who are vying for the 2 available seats on the board. They will speak in alphabetical order. First, Matthew Carter, 60 Woodlawn Drive. Scott Murdoch, 3 Sunset Court. Jennifer Richardson, 12 Hardwood Road. Stephen Tatro, 53 Oak Grove Road. So we'll begin with Mr. Carter.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for hosting this event. My name is Matthew Carter, and I love it here. I love my life at Lake Monticello. Just today, I picked up a Buy Nothing on Jefferson, a green lamp for our piano. A couple days before that, my wife Kelsey and I went kayaking for the first time this season. We have 2 kayaks slipped at Beach 3. Our 3-year-old son, Isaac, has a best friend 1 street over. He calls him his brother. And just next week, I hope to start beginning to tutor a neighbor's teenage son in Latin. I love it here. I'm also proud to be running in a field that includes Steve Tatro, whose eloquent and thoughtful remarks on many an occasion I've heard at these meetings, Scott Murdoch, who I know to be a fine musician and a dedicated member of the audit committee, and of course, my great friend, Jenny Richardson, about whom more in a bit. Vote for me, please. I believe I deserve your vote. If you want the strongest possible champion in our community's ongoing fight against Aqua and its outrageous rates and its poor services. Just the other day, I was talking to my next door neighbor, Eric, and he said, these rates are simply too high. Everyone is paying too high of a price. Everyone is paying attention. We have to continue the momentum. And I agree with my next door neighbor, Eric. So vote for me if you have fire in your belly about Aqua and its unfair rates, but vote for us, vote for me and Jenny, because we're running as a ticket. if you agree with us, the both of us, that the Don Polonis affair last summer showed just how loving, tolerant, and near unanimous our lake community can be with regard to matters of basic human decency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we go to Mr. Murdoch.
Good evening. Again, thank you for hosting this event. We're very happy to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about myself, which is something I don't do often. My wife and I moved to the lake here. We live on Tufton Pond. We've been here full-time about 5 years, and we thoroughly enjoy this community. Couldn't have picked a better place to retire. And because I spent the last 15 years of my life working, managing condominium HOAs, I felt that it would be appropriate for me to get involved, which I did. After we got here full-time, I became a member of the Audit Committee and now the Finance and Audit Committee as they've merged, and have spent a great deal of time working for the committee. Some special groups, the Accounts Receivable Work Group, as well as the Troon Work Group. And I feel very familiar at this point with the finances of the association. And because of the experience I have, I believe that I can do a great deal to help. And one of my biggest concerns is how we report to the community. There's a lot of concern about the dues increase. There's a lot of distrust in the community that I've sensed as I've gone out and talked with people. And I think it's not a lack of transparency. I think it's a matter of clarity. I think that we need to be reporting in more detail on all of our financial activity, and particularly our reserve funds, the expenditures there, as well as the projected balances. I think in educating the community in this way, we can gain more trust, support, and tighten up our finances. That's my primary reason for running, and I want to see that we do our very best to preserve our amenities and keep them in top shape as we saw them, as we looked at homes here and decided that this was the place to retire. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Murdoch. Moving on to Ms. Richardson.
First of all, I would like to thank the LMOA Broadcast Committee and Mr. Kraus for organizing this forum on behalf of our lake residents. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be with you this evening. If you had asked me a year ago if I had any ambitions to run for our local HOA Board of Directors one day, I would have said I had none at all. I have never been in a race since elementary school. I read my emails dutifully from member services and had a vague understanding of who was on our board. I felt like I had a good grasp of the issues facing our community, but I never thought that I would have anything helpful to contribute. Last summer, when I discovered that one of our own board members, Director Polonis, had said such heinous and hateful things about my family, my friends, my neighbors, and myself, I was activated. I found myself coming to every board meeting, whether it was standing room only or a few folks in the audience. I found myself walking up to the podium to speak publicly, something that fills me with anxiety, to stand up for my community members because it was that important. It was then I realized that not only was I fully capable of contributing positively to the board, but I could be a catalyst for lasting change toward a more inclusive, equitable, and accessible community here at Lake Monticello. I also realized I had a vital ally here at the lake in Mateo Carter, who spearheaded the campaign against Director Polonis along with his wife, Kelsey Cowger. His energy and intelligence steered a massive movement to remove Polonis and an unprecedented turnout in the special election last year. And I am confident that with both of us on the board, we could move mountains. We moved to the lake over 9 years ago because it is a safe and fun place to live. So my other goal while being on the board is to become more transparent in our funds. As Mr. Murdoch described, there is a lot of hesitancy and distrust in the community, and that can be solved by making our finances more easily understood, to put it in lay people's terms. And I think that I can make that possible. I want to solicit the community to find out how best we can present this data so that everybody has confidence and trust in the board going forward. I also want to make sure that we preserve our amenities because we basically moved here because of the amenities, and I want them to be around for my children, as well as the people who decide to retire here. It's important for both sets of families to preserve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. All right, moving on then to Mr. Tetro.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I first saw Lake Monticello under what could best be described as less than ideal conditions. It was January 2019 during a polar vortex, and it was 13 degrees. 10 minutes to the gate, with no leaves on the trees, I was enamored with this place. You see, I was moving from Florida where developers bulldoze everything for construction. And I'm originally from Vermont, where forests make up 75% of the state. So the retention of trees here was a beautiful surprise to me. I'd like to help preserve his beautiful lifestyle as well as make sure our finances are stable by seeking election to the board. My qualifications are centered in two separate areas. First, the first half of my career was spent working for two large corporations. My service with the second company was with a Fortune 10 firm. I was the corporate officer managing a department of 125 people with a budget ranging from 16 to 21 million. During this time, I learned two essential corporate mandates: trust but verify, and one can tell everything by the financial numbers. I used that experience when I founded my own company and ran it for 20 years, and I hope to bring this expertise to Lake Monticello for its benefit. Secondly, during my career, I was transferred all over this country playing hodgepodge. The home I live in now is my 16th. As a result, I've lived in several HOAs. I have actually served on the boards of 5 separate HOAs, 2 in Minnesota, 1 in Georgia, 1 in Rhode Island, and 1 in Florida. I was the chairman of one of them in Minnesota. Nearly every issue presented here to us, I have dealt with at one time or another. I feel confident my overall experience will be beneficial to Lake Monticello, and I hope you'll allow me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you very, very much indeed. So let's move on to the questions. First one, what are your top priorities or goals, if you will, during your term? Might as well just run down the line. Start with you, Mr. Carter, please.
Thank you for the question. I mentioned, as I hope was clear, that my central issue here is our community's ongoing fight against Aqua. My expertise in this matter is, I hope, considerable. I and my family became involved in the fight against the Atlantic Coast Pipeline near the beginning of that controversy in 2014. And it took 6 full years, but we won. We were representing Nelson County in that fight, and the project did not see completion, and that's because we were very deliberate and very strategic and very patient in the way that we applied pressure on everyone from Dominion Energy itself to the DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, to elected officials at the local level and the Commonwealth. It took time, it took skill, and it took a lot of us working together. People flag in their enthusiasm and passion for any fight on any issue if it takes multiple years to accomplish. And I can promise to be a person who keeps that fight going and keeps consideration of the issue going. My expertise in conducting high stakes and consequential campaigns is not confined to environmental issues. although I'm very proud of that win. In 2018, I was involved in lobbying one of our state senators, representing Stanton among other areas, to flip his vote from a no on Medicaid expansion to a yes on Medicaid expansion. And as a consequence of that legislative result, more than 500,000 Virginians who didn't have any health care at all beforehand had access to really good health care. So I make this connection again with Aqua as my priority. It's not just in the environmental realm that I have a great track record of winning results on campaigns that improve the lives of all Virginians, both here at the lake, in Fluvanna, and throughout the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Mr. Murdoch, how about you, sir?
Yes, as I mentioned, finance is certainly one of my priorities. As a general manager of an HOA, and for a period of 3 years, I was a regional manager over 7 HOAs. At that time, I wrote 7 monthly reports for 7 different boards, and the other years I wrote a report for my board every month that detailed all of the financial activity, from income and expenses to reserve expenses, interest earned, so on and so forth, so that the board and anybody that had an interest had full access to all of the financial activity of the associations. I think that's critical to gain the trust of the people that we represent. Another priority is and I'm very pleased to see that there's a change in the ECC and Compliance Committee to the Residential Standards Committee. I hope this is going to make a difference, and we'll see some of the homes that have just been really let go, either in their landscaping or just the physical properties, be restored, so that we can all be proud as we drive down the street of all the homes that we pass. I think there's been far too much leniency or non-enforcement of the standards that we would like to see here. And again, the reporting communication to the community, I think, is the most important thing that we can do. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Murdoch. Moving on to Ms. Richardson.
Thank you. So what my hope is when I'm elected to the board is to create a community where everyone feels seen, recognized, and appreciated through the efforts of LMOA, whether that be recognition or celebration of a holiday often overlooked, or bearing in mind work schedules or accessibility issues when planning public events or meetings. All members deserve a seat at the table, and through our voices, I want to give them that. In addition, becoming the only woman serving on the current board empowers me to make decisions through the lens of inclusivity. I feel that my voice will also represent the voice of working parents who may not have time to be active in the community but have the desire. And so I feel like I can definitely represent that population well. But I can also represent the population of our older residents who have come here in their sunset years to live a wonderful life of enjoyment and relaxation. I've worked with a diverse set of older residents throughout my career in the community at the physical therapy office that I have worked at for a few years now, as well as through YRF. There have been such a diverse set of people that have come together through the Young Residents and Families Committee to create some wonderful programs. So I would just love to join those populations and make everything accessible for everyone. The other thing that I want to focus on is financial transparency, which I think that we're pretty much all in agreement on. But not only financial transparency, but to make finance accessible. Some people look at a spreadsheet and don't know what they're looking at. It doesn't make sense. Or some people are visually impaired, and looking at a spreadsheet on a computer doesn't actually give them information. So I'd want to create a way to make this easy to understand and easy to see. So those are my two big issues on why I want to run. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Ms. Richardson. Mr. Tatro?
Yeah, my interests are purely budgetary. I feel that we've been a little bit lax. Well, I take that back. We've been very lax in the way that we manage our money. Examples, um, I feel that the putting green or practice green out here was not a justifiable expense. Anyone disagrees with me, we can talk afterwards. But I feel that, but more importantly, the handling of Truon and our food and beverage deficit. We lost $353,000 according to the last number I heard during 2023. One would wonder why somebody in the middle of the year didn't say, wait a minute, hold on. Um, why is we should have been about $175,000 loss at that time, we figured half. So why did we proceed? Why did this go on? Why was Troon permitted to run up a deficit that big? I mean, I find it amazing that the board was talking about an increase in dues beyond the 3%. At the same time, we're letting Troon run up a deficit of that size. That's, in my corporate life, you eat your loss and move on. And this was just horrible. Like, and I want to change. I want to help change that. We need better policing of our money, how we spend it, and where we do what we do with it. We owe that to the people that live here, and we need to give them a good opportunity to voice their concerns. Secondly, I really don't think we make very good communication with everybody around here. I understand the demographics of this place have changed. I'm told that 10 years ago, it was 70% retirees and 30% families. Now I understand those numbers are reversed. And we do a lot of communication using Favana News and email, but today's young folks don't necessarily communicate with just that. They use social media, and from what I understand, we don't employ a lot of social media, or we don't want to. And I believe that is a clear mistake we need to correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tatro. So moving on to the next question. What should the Board of Directors be focusing on now? Let's say, might as well come back in the reverse order. Mr. Tatro, start with you if we may.
Well, it goes right back to my first point. Budgetary, we need to get our budget under control. We spend money and I think we're putting our amenities in jeopardy. And I mean, last year we could have easily closed the pub, and maybe we should have when we ran up at mid-year when we had a huge deficit. We need to get those finances. We need to police that, carefully watch it. And we need, our costs are going to go up. There's no doubt about that. Now, when I got my license when I was 16, the price of gas was 19 cents. It ain't that anymore. And they keep going up. Our largest line item, I believe, is payroll. And we want to keep good staff, whether it be on maintenance or in the office. We need to pay these people and give them appropriate benefits, otherwise we'll lose them. Those are the goals and things I wish are important, and I think are important.
Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. I think our most present issue at this time is preserving our reserves. If we do not preserve our reserves, we will not be able to maintain our basic amenities. We will lose the pool. We will lose maintenance of the golf course. So my biggest priority is securing our finances, same as Mr. Tatro, to make sure that these amenities are preserved for years to come. They increase our property value, which impacts us all. So I think that's the most pressing need from the board right now.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Murdoch?
Yeah, I would agree that the finances are a major issue. And finances are really three pieces. There's our income and expense, and we need to be, I think, very frugal in managing our expenses and watching where we are with income relative to the expenses. There's our reserves, which we have a professional reserve company prepare the study for us every 5 years. And it's a pretty complex report. We just received the draft of the 2024 study or 25 study. And if you make a comparison to the 10-year plan that the Finance Committee presented during the budget cycle, the new study adds about $4.1 million, I think, in that same, it's actually a 9-year period now. So we have a lot of really hard work to do in looking at the reserves, what is necessary, what can be extended, what can be possibly eliminated. But the reserve is a major piece, and then the third piece is our investments. One of the things that has always concerned me is the way that our reserves are structured into 3 separate buckets, and we limit our investing to correspond with those 3 separate buckets, as opposed to being able to combine them and have more flexibility in investing and bringing in more return. So finance is the area that I think the board needs to be focused on.
Thank you. Mr. Carter?
A special concern of mine will be to do my part to make sure that the board is communicating and coordinating as well as possible with our many committees, because our committees do a lot of great work and also have a lot of power. In the course of researching this position and what it would entail, I learned that it was the Wildlife Committee about 10 years ago that made the case for and made it effective that deer hunting stopped at the lake. And that was a good decision, and it was the committee's good work that made it so. I would also point out, as I don't doubt almost everyone here is aware, that this month is the 12th consecutive hottest month on record in human history. And part of that is understanding that we will see, whether we like it or not, more extreme weather here at the lake and indeed all over Virginia. So, so far from even contemplating for a moment giving up on paying our dam insurance, we need climate education. We need to plant more trees. We need to continue to keep a very sharp eye indeed on the quality of our water. And last but certainly not least, let me join this quartet. Let me sing bass in this quartet. We need to pass the dues increase. I was speaking with a friend who's actually on the board, and he said, if the dues increase passes, no matter who gets elected, you will have a pleasant first season on the board, because the board will have passed off a good inheritance to you. But if we don't pass that dues increase, it doesn't really matter which combination of the 4 of us gets elected. It's going to be a hard go of it in the upcoming year. So I see an obligation to campaign for that dues increase.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Next question, actually, you've just answered. Are you in favor of the proposed dues increase designated for the reserves? Why or why not? I don't know. I guess maybe we can skip your answer if you want to. Go right to Mr. If you want to amend, add any more, okay. But otherwise,
Becoming a part of any board as taking on a fiduciary responsibility. I was recently elected to a 501c3 board last month, an environmental board. And as part of joining the board on day one, I got a absolute top-down education on the financial health of the organization, and that was an ethical obligation. If you sit on a board, you are ethically obligated to protect its financial health. And for me, the easiest way to do that is to increase our reserves this year, not next year, not the year after. Thank you.
okay, fine. Mr. Murdoch?
Yeah, I fully support the dues increase, as I think we all do. As I said, I've had a chance to review the draft reserve study, and it's imperative that we get the dues up, or the contributions to the reserve study, and stop taxing operations. The last few years, the budget has stated that the operations will contribute $300,000 into the reserves, in addition to what we are already contributing, and that's putting a squeeze on Tom Chowder and his staff to really cut back on expenses. We need to have dedicated contribution to the reserves. And it has to be, it needs to be more in line with what the reserve professionals are telling us that we need to contribute.
Yeah, I support the $150 proposed increase. I'm concerned that we won't be anywhere near where we should be in 10 years. I saw a projection that said that without the $150 increase, we would be at about $800,000 in our reserve by 2032. And if we do pass it, then our reserve in 2032 will be approximately 4 million. And that's a very big difference. And we need to keep this up. If we don't, if we pass on this, and I suspect the board may ask again next year, if we pass it again, at some point, the board may be compelled to ask for an assessment. You've all heard the phrase, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. If we don't do it now, the bill later will be much higher than we're faced with. So I encourage everybody to vote yes on the request. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. I am also in favor of the dues increase. I believe the board's first responsibility is a fiduciary one that is owed to the members here at the lake for safeguarding their dues. But I also realize that in the situation that we are currently in, we are at risk of losing everything that we love about the lake. And I'm committed to not allowing that to happen. I truly believe that not only the current board, but the incoming board will be frugal with the amount that they're putting into the reserves from the dues increase to ensure that that money will continue to last us for years to come. And I am confident when Mateo and I are on the board that we will make sure that the things that we love in Lake Monticello are preserved for generations to come.
Next question, the R&R was a $7.1 million project which replaced and repeated aging and outdated facilities. In another 25 to 30 years, these facilities will again need renovation or replacement. What do you think can be done by the Board of Directors to ensure we have enough money in our reserves to accommodate future renovations and replacement and ensure that the LMOA community is protected? Can we start with you, Mr. Tatro?
Now, as I said before, I've been on 5 boards and the chairman of one, and I've seen dues increases and I've seen assessments. No one wants to see an assessment, trust me. The place I was on was comparable, well, not a little less than the size of this one. And we faced an assessment of $4,500 per household. You don't want to get there, and I don't want to see it either. So we need to approve this dues increase of 150, and that's how I see us taking care of those problems.
All right, thank you. Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. So I was a resident here when the R&R initiative was passed. I saw the buildings in disarray and how wonderful it was when they were repaired and renovated. And I also understand that they will fall in disrepair again. But I believe through the efforts of our board and working together, we can be shrewd with our money and our spending so that we have those reserves for years to come. So we don't have to ask for repeated dues increases every year, every 2 years, every 5 years. Inflation will continue to go up. But I think if we continue to monitor the way that we are spending our members' money very closely and make sensible decisions about how we're taking care of our maintenance vehicles and other big line items in our budget, we can stretch that. We can make this work and have the money for new facilities in 25 to 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carter?
Thanks for the question. The world and the community can change very fast. Just ask anyone who was around in February 2020 whether they knew what was coming next. Very few of us did. So I'm reluctant to engage in wish casting or a lot of projection about what our community might look like decades in the future. I'm a big believer in not just living one day at a time, but focusing on the task directly in front of me rather than making some grand forecasting. So again, not to be noisomely repetitive, but I think the priority has to be past the dues increase now, be frugal with our funds next year, and make that into a habit that grows over years and decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murdoch?
Yeah, I think that what we need to do to be able to um, replace facilities in 25 years, uh, we need to manage our reserves. We need to understand what is in the reserve study, what it requires to fund it and keep it healthy as we go forward. The dues increase is the first step. Um, there's some things that have happened that I've witnessed on the Finance and Audit Committee, and that is that we're investing more money than we had in the past. There was periods where there was a great deal of cash that sat idle and didn't earn money. We're now investing more, and we're seeing a better return on that. And that's, again, part of the overall financial strategy. But the reserves need to be managed, and we just need to be sure that we're making the contributions we should.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, what is the highest priority problem facing LMOA now, and how would you address it? Mr. Murdoch?
I think our highest priority is our financial future. I think I've made several comments in that direction. We need the finances to preserve our community as we enjoy it today, to preserve our amenities and to keep our home values up.
Mr. Tatro?
Well, in this area, I have to disagree with Matthew. We do need to look down the road. You can't knee-jerk every problem. You've got to, in that kind of corporate life, you have to be able to plan ahead. You got a plan A, and that's fine. But what if it doesn't work? You've got to have a plan B, C, maybe even a D. So I think that we need a plan. We have to plan accordingly. We've got a 10-year financial plan. Those plans need to be adjusted every once in a while, at least every couple of years, to take a look at it. At the corporate level, I had to look at that at my financial plan every year and make sure that I was on track. And that's what I think on that matter.
Okay, Mr. Tatro. Did I cover everybody here? Carter, Mr. Carter?
Thank you for that rejoinder, Steve. And I agree, we need plans A, B, C, and D. And we also, to steal a page from your playbook, need to trust but verify each of those plans. Not to be simply echoing this matter about which all four of us agree that passing the dues increase needs to be a priority. I would point out that a very clear area for improvement and for sort of overall community vibrancy, in my opinion, is to steer away from approaching our differences of opinion about community matters along purely generational lines. I've seen so much discourse about, our most heartfelt concerns disintegrate because people assume that they know what's on each other's minds or in each other's hearts because of our chronological age. And in my opinion, and in all of the organizations that I take pride in serving, an intergenerational approach and intergenerational wisdom. And what I mean by that is when you have a problem, you consult people who are teenagers and in their 20s and in their 30s, on the way up to nonagenarians and centenarians if their opinions are available. That's how we have that vision for the future, decades in the future. And I believe that we are rich in intergenerational wisdom here at the lake. We all live around the same ring road, so we've got to talk to each other about everything that's on our mind, and please not hide behind our keyboards. Talk to each other in person.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Carter. The question is, Lake Monticello is not a standalone entity. What do you see as opportunities and challenges in interconnecting with the county? Mr. Tetro? Start with you.
You would ask me that. When we moved here, my wife and I split our duties. She deals with county issues. I deal with here. So she's probably better qualified to answer that question than I am.
She's not ready for the board.
But I saw some involvement by this community when there was that measure before the Board of Supervisors regarding increasing the how many residences could be or homes could be on an individual lot. And I guess it had to do with the marina condos, trying to increase what they could put over there. And I sat there and watched a whole lot of people in line testify before the Board of Supervisors, and that motion got killed. So dealing with the Fluvanna County, we have contacts. Actually, I'm not going to take credit for that. My wife has contacts with the development supervisor over there and several other people, and I take my cue from her.
Mhm. Okay, fair enough. Mr. Carter.
Thank you for the question. I wish I had nearly unlimited time to answer it because I'm very passionate about it. Fluvanna County is changing a lot demographically, politically. Sometimes those changes can feel very swift. And I think if the board misses out on opportunities to be more widely involved in what's going on, not just in the county, but in the region and around the Commonwealth, we are not doing our part to secure a prosperous future. I know that it's likely in the next 3 years, during which, two of us will be serving terms on the board, a decision will be made about a regional transit authority. And if Fluvanna is at the table for those talks, it'll be great for all of us who are tired maybe of driving in our own private cars up and down 53 in Milton. I would hate to see this lake community not benefit from those ongoing regional discussions. And this is something, what I'm about to say, that I'm both professionally involved in and avocationally involved in. Elections have consequences, and next year we're going to elect a new governor of Virginia, and how we experience life here at the lake will be influenced drastically, whether we realize it or not, by who sits in that governor's mansion. And so I hope that in my life in politics over the past decade, I have continued to inspire others to vote each and every time, to inform others about the stakes of elections, and just to be widely politically engaged. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Mr. Murdoch.
I think there's a lot going on right now. The development of the Community Development Committee, we started to reach out, and there's been a lot of, I think, additional communication with the folks outside of Lake Monticello. Our work with the Aqua Water Group, I think, is making a lot of progress, and yeah, so I think there are a lot of things that have been initiated to date that are taking us out into the community. A year ago, my lake music partner and I were asked to make a presentation to the Fluvanna Leadership Development Committee or group, and I was kind of shocked when the woman I met with said, why do you call that lake music? You Lakers are so exclusive. And I had never thought about it before. I moved to the lake. I didn't move to Fluvanna County. But obviously, there are issues that concern us all, and we need to be more involved outside the gates.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. This is something very near and dear to my heart. I feel like everything happens at the local level, and that the board has a duty to be actively involved in the happenings of the school board and the Board of Supervisors, because their decisions directly impact the value of our home and the quality of our community. So whether it be through the Community Development Committee, giving them clear guidance as to how to interact with the Board of Supervisors, or I know we have a current board member who was a candidate for the Planning Committee. I will be an ardent supporter of constant involvement with local politics.
Thank you. Here's one: with the volatile political climate, how will you equitably and fairly represent a diverse constituency without letting your own personal political views cloud your objectivity when making decisions for the entire community. Mr. Murdoch?
My focus would be on the community and what's good for the community. I'd put politics aside. I don't consider this a political race, and I don't see how politics should play any role in our function on the board.
Well, okay. Ms. Richardson, how about you?
Could you repeat the question one more
Yeah.
time?
With the volatile political climate, how will you equitably and fairly represent a diverse constituency without letting your personal political views cloud your objectivity when making decisions for the entire community?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kraus. That is a great question, and I fully agree with Mr. Murdoch. I don't consider this role on the board of director a political role. We're all elected to ensure the longevity of our community, to protect our property values, and to make sure that everybody enjoys their life at the lake. And I don't think it's political to make sure that everybody at the lake feels included and seen, which is one of my major reasons for running. So I don't think it's a political decision to make sure that people of different races, ethnicities, religions, family structures are accommodated and acknowledged and celebrated in the community. And that's what I intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carter?
While I fully agree that there shouldn't be politically motivated decision-making by board members, I do think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes underpinning our deep divides are also deep political divisions. And I hope to be a person who can listen patiently to folks, even folks with whom I disagree profoundly. And actually, I have a record to stand on here. Uh, Director Polanis directly endangered my family by doxing us last summer, but I extended an olive branch to him 3 times. That was his decision to ignore my olive branch, but I hope to have demonstrated that I am willing to find common cause and willing to be a peacemaker with those with whom I disagree on ideological grounds and even religious and theological grounds profoundly. The fact of the disagreement doesn't have to influence our work on the board, and we have to treat each other with kindness, tolerance, and respect.
Well, thank you. Mr. Tatro?
I believe myself to be a fair man. I try to not to take into considerations of race, color, creed, gender, or sexual persuasion. Anything I do, I judge people one at a time. To judge people by a group is abhorrent to me. That's it.
Thank you. Certainly.
I would just like to say that it is, in my opinion, an example of white privilege to say that it's possible not to consider race in our decision making. I think the members of this community who are not white, as the 4 of us are, have a very different lens on the matter, and we should listen to them and learn from them.
Okay, all right. Anybody else want to chime in? You know, is a discussion is encouraged anytime you you feel the need. If you could change one single aspect of LMOA, what would that be and why? How about Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. That's a great question. There are so many things that I love about this community. If I could change one aspect of LMOA, I would like to create opportunities for it to be more accessible for our neighbors with disabilities, so that they can use all of the amenities that we have. This might not be something that we can afford right now, but you know, if we had a hypothetical pile of money, that's something that I would love to invest in.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tatro, how about you?
If I could change anything, it would be the prevailing attitude of apathy that I see prevalent in this community. I've attended almost every board meeting for the last 2.5 years. Last October, besides the board and the broadcast, I was the only person sitting over there. And that bothers the hell out of me. And we got 4,625 homes here. So that translates to about over 8,000 voting adults. And we don't get enough participation. And that is a really that leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. I'm not sure how to correct it, except to increase our communication, which I discussed earlier. So that's my response.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Murdoch?
I agree with Steve on the apathy. It's really a shame that more people don't come out to attend these events and to vote. But I think that in the time that we've been here, we've seen more and more community activity, which I think is the way to get people involved. The bonfires, the fall fest, and that sort of thing. We've seen great turnouts in those events, and we've met tons of new people. And I think the more of that that we can do and draw the community out together, we can attack this issue.
Okay, well, thank you. And Mr. Carter?
Here, here, down with apathy. I hope some people in the audience listening tonight will themselves circulate petitions and run for this office next year. It's better when we all take a turn. I would also say, though, that sometimes this apathy doesn't emerge overnight. There's a period of despondency in a resident's mind that precedes total apathy, a feeling maybe that they're not being listened to, that because of some election in the past, their vote didn't matter or shouldn't have mattered, that sometimes change happens so slowly and incrementally that residents feel that they'll never see it, that boards like this exist to say no more often than they exist to say yes. These are all concerns, but what I'd pick as my sort of big signal concern is actually something that changed for me since I became a parent, a dad for the first time in September of 2020. I'd always been a very cautious driver myself. Not many speeding infractions, generally obeying the speed limit. But I didn't see until I had a child playing on the street where I live that this 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is really important, not just to make sure that, I can get to where I'm going safely, but I hope that we can see in each other, who keeps us safe, we keep us safe. We should all care about obeying that speed limit in our vehicles because we should all have a common concern that it's not about just some people thriving or obeying legally posted rules. It's about a community where all of us want to keep each other safe and want to obey these posted rules because we care about the future of our children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you believe the current ECC rules, regulations, and policies truly reflect the wishes of the membership? If not, what should be done to make the ECC relevant and useful? Mr. Murdoch?
On that earlier, the changeover to the Residential Standards Committee, I think is a great step. I think we've just hired someone that will now be out and making observations throughout the community and making the group more active in enforcing the regulations. I think the regulations are fine. They just need to be enforced.
Okay. Mr. Carter?
I should admit to a bit of bias here. My wife and I had our little free library taken down for not being in compliance, and we're still salty about it. I don't have particularly strong views on this issue, so I'd like to cede my time to others that might feel more strongly about this particular one.
Okay, all right. Mr. Tatro?
Well, I think the ECC has problems, had problems, is still having problems. They hired a part-timer. That's a mistake. We should have a full-timer. Take a drive around here. Scott mentioned earlier, there's a number of houses around here that are either the lawns are unmowed and they're in disrepair, and we need to correct that. These houses affect us all, especially valuation-wise. And we need to, I want to see a strong residential standards committee take a look around and enforce the rules.
Okay, Mr. Tatro. Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. I feel, from what I understand, that the ECC rules and regulations are, they seem fine. I think it's mostly a matter, which has been echoed by the other candidates, of being enforceable. Even when we were looking at houses in Lake Monticello 9 years ago, the realtor said, "Yeah, there's some nice houses here, but there are a lot of outliers." And he pointed to a house that was like covered in old and rusty cars in the driveway. And so this has been an ongoing problem for at least the length of time that I've lived here. What I would like to see is more enforcement of the ECC rules and regulations, but also giving the homeowners an opportunity, more of an opportunity to correct. Maybe if it's a longer length of time, or bringing back, I know that there was a committee meeting for the ECC when you had gotten a violation, you could come and plead your case. I think that was a great plan. I'd like to see that continue. I just want an ECC that recognizes that people are working families that might not have time, and kind of gives them some leeway and grace to fix these issues.
Okay, thank you. What would your process look like to amend policies that you feel no longer benefit the community? Mr. Tatro?
Well, I think that the first step is to make sure we have a legal counsel who understands the law and our specific needs. I think that our bylaws, in some instances, may be out of date with state law, and I'd like someone to make sure of that. So that's the area that I would concentrate in. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Ms. Richardson?
That is also the area that I would concentrate in. I discovered to my dismay last summer that our bylaws were not the same as state code, which greatly upset me when we were trying to remove Director Polonis. So I would like to make sure all of our bylaws reflect Virginia code, and I would work with the board and membership to make sure that that happens.
Okay. Mr. Murdoch, how about you, sir?
I think there needs to be a periodic review of the governing documents. And I'm sure there are some that are outdated at this point. I think it's very important, as Steve stated, that we do have good legal counsel involved in that process. That and we're certain that we are able to make the changes that we do. Nothing in particular that comes to mind with regard to the bylaws, but I think there should be periodic review, perhaps by an ad hoc committee, to go through them and determine what changes may need to be made, and then those would be brought to the community.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Carter?
I admire these three preceding answers. I also wanted to say that I hope not to make the mistake that I've seen a lot of candidates for a lot of offices make, which is to say trying to be all things to all people. I understand that as one of two freshly elected members of this board, I would have a lot to learn. And so I wouldn't immediately assume that I could come on and start making lots of changes to the bylaws and the code. That said, I do have recent experience helping to draft legislation and working with very consequential, high level and rich in detail legal documents. And I hope to bring that acumen to this role. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one that takes up LMOA bylaws. Given the current LMOA bylaws and that HOAs generally improve property values by requiring some form of lot and unit conformance to existing bylaws by all members, what do you recommend be done to enforce the existing bylaws? Mr. Murdoch?
Yeah, I mean, typically the violations are handled by a board of directors or a particular committee if they're specific to the committee, and then advice is given to the board for a final decision. But I think it goes back to, as we talked about residential standards, that we need to enforce our bylaws. We need to be certain that there are not violations that are going unnoted.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Carter?
Well, let me say at the beginning that if what you're seeking in a future board member, if your first priority for a candidate is a capital E enforcer, perhaps I am not the ideal choice because, to be honest, as I sit, for instance, real story, scraping dried blueberry yogurt off my vinyl siding because my 3-year-old has had a bit of a puke, I might not actually be thinking about that in terms of conformity to bylaws, just trying to keep my own property as outwardly acceptable as possible. So I think having good relations with our neighbors about these things, a friendly chat rather than sensing that we're, narking on each other to the compliance committee would be a good approach. I have loved getting to know so many households on my street as a result of last summer's campaign, as far as the growth of friendships and other social relationships, maybe most of all, my friendship with my dear friend Jenny. I see that it's important to talk neighbor to neighbor about the things that matter to us most, and that can be a first step before going to the ECC. Thank you.
Okay, well, good friend Jenny, Ms. Richardson, how about you?
Thank you. From what I understand, I think that the board relies heavily on our committees in terms of recognizing and enforcing compliance. I think we have a compliance committee, and we also have an environmental control committee, and I think that our committees do a pretty good job of recognizing violations and working with the board to and the membership to resolve them. However, I also agree with Mr. Carter that a lot of these conversations are best handled neighbor to neighbor. This could be an opportunity to build relationships in your street, in your community, and recognize that you're there for each other. You know, if you see a neighbor that has siding that needs to maybe be power washed, you can say, "Hey, I have a power washer. Can I come and help you out and wash your siding this summer?" So I think this is a really good opportunity to have more camaraderie in the lake.
Thank you. Mr. Tatro?
I'm not sure I understand the relevance of the question. Um, when Kathy and I were looking to live around here, the first thing we avoided was kitty cutter type developments like Nahor up here. All those houses are the same. Living there, I'd sooner have a root canal. So I'm not really sure that we need to worry anything about that. We've got a wonderfully diversified community here, housing wise. They just need to be neat, clean, and kept up. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Now, here's one going back to trees. Considering how really important mature trees are to the ecology, air quality for wildlife and pollinators, do you think Lake Monticello should make more of an effort to protect trees? And if so, what should be done? Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. This is a great question because I think one of my favorite things about the community is how heavily wooded it is. You see so many new developments that are bare of trees, and they give us such a more. It makes me feel like I'm living in the midst of nature. Like this is not a suburban neighborhood, but we live, you know, in the back of the woods, away from city life. So I do want to protect our mature trees and make sure that we are cognizant of the decisions that we make that might affect their health.
Okay. Mr. Tatro?
Well, as I said before, I was born and raised in Vermont, a heavily forested state, thank God. And when I see out here, I cry when I consider all the trees that were sacrificed for that practice green out here. To me, that was a sin. But I've also seen neighbors take down trees, and I'm not entirely certain they sought approval to do it. And I got a neighbor who took down a bunch in the backyard, and I reported to ECC. And the response was, well, maybe they're using it for firewood. That doesn't solve the problem. They needed permission, which they didn't get, and they don't have a chimney, so they don't have a fireplace. So where's the word going? So we need to enforce that rule. You need consent. Unless the tree is dead, you need consent to take down a tree, and that should be enforced to the hilt.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mr. Murdoch?
Yeah, I think we need to preserve the trees. It's just creates such a great environment here. I feel like I'm living in the mountains and uh, but I think we need to be consistent with how we deal with it. I mean, uh, my understanding is that people should apply for a permit to take down a tree or a group of trees. Um, and if we see tree removal trucks coming in through the gate should have a obligation to find out where they're going and be sure that permit has been obtained. Um, Also inconsistent in that we live on Tufton Pond and we look across the pond to the spoils yard, I guess they call it. And one day there was a group of our maintenance people out cutting down several trees. And I was told that they were taking them down because they didn't want to pick them up when they blew down. And so I guess there was some logic behind that. But I think if we're going to require our residents to gain permit to take down trees, that there should be some uh, consistency with the maintenance department. When I called maintenance, I was told that, well, actually was told by the director of the ECC that she had just come back from vacation and she wasn't sure what they were doing, which was a concern. But again, I think we need to be consistent in what we do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carter?
Up with trees. I'm glad we agree on something so important for our community. And more specifically, down with planting invasive species that harm the local ecosystem and the local biome. My wife and I celebrated making it through the first year of the pandemic by planting a beautiful umbrella magnolia in our side yard. Though, surprise, surprise, we had to do it all over again a couple months because the deer got to it the first time. So, lesson learned, we had to deer cage. But I'm not making light of this. I mentioned my concern about our uncertain climate future. And of course, tree canopy is a great guarantee against the harms that come from extreme weather. So I'm happy to be in agreement about all of this, and I see I have some time remaining. One of my favorite memories so far since we moved to the lake in the summer of 2019 is when my friend on the beautification corps, Helen, came over and quizzed me on what types of trees I had in our front yard. And rather than being disdainful that I couldn't name them all in terms of their, Linnaean nomenclature, she treated me to a tour of what the names and the properties of all of our trees were. And I've never forgotten that a member of one of our committees took the time to educate a friend of hers and a member of her community on just how important our local trees are. I'll never forget that. Thank you, Helen.
Okay. All right. One of the primary responsibilities of a board member is fiduciary, which also includes risk mitigation. How does your background help LMOA manage risk and ensure the financial health of the organization? Mr. Murdoch?
Um, Prior to managing homeowner associations, I managed hotels for 25 years. And every night when I went home from work, I had anywhere from 300 to 700 guests sleeping in my building. Um, Risk management in the hotel business was an extremely important thing, aside from the fiduciary responsibility, just the insurance of safety throughout the building. And I think in this case, we need to be cognizant of all the potential problems that may come about in terms of our fiduciary management and keep that at the forefront of our work here.
Okay. Mr. Carter?
I fully understand that the main responsibility of this job is fiscal and fiduciary. Everyone needs to know, if you're voting for someone for this board, that these candidates will take full consideration of the money that's coming in and how it's being spent, and will pass on to a future wave, a future generation of the board, the maximum financial health possible. My own experience on these matters is ongoing. This year, I'm directing multiple political campaigns, most of them issue work, environmental, all over the country. And my largest campaign, based in North Carolina, has a $7 million budget. We started in late January, and that budget has to last us through Election Day. And we haven't had even $1 of overage so far. I checked right before I came over here. We're actually $50,000 under budget. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because not just individuals with their own agenda, but a community of people with skin in the game working together tell each other the truth about an organization's financial health. We have to tell each other the truth about our community's financial health. And if there's that level of truth telling and that level of trust, then financial health will follow. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Carter. Mr. Tatro, how about you?
Well, as I previously stated in my opening remarks, I ran a division of a Fortune 10 company. That division was asset management. Now, that can mean two things. Asset management in that sense meant that I managed every manufacturing asset for that company. And they had 44 manufacturing divisions, from helicopters to jet engines to easy-go golf carts, everywhere online. So I had to consider risk management in almost every decision we had to make regarding purchase, sale, demolition, you name it. So it's an important part of any fiduciary responsibility, and I've got the experience to address it. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Richardson?
Thank you. So I think that the dues increase is a really big part of our risk management. I think with the help of the additional $150 of dues, we can not only be prepared for any environmental factors that might put our community at risk in the future. And as Mr. Carter has said, there might be significant environmental factors that we need to be prepared for. But also it will protect our residences in our community. So I believe that the dues increase will go a long way in terms of making sure that we are protected for years to come. I also want to state that I've never managed multi-million-dollar companies, but I have been a treasurer for a school board candidate, the late G. Murray Key. And we had a very tight budget. And working with G, I was able to make sure that every single dollar that was donated was working toward either getting her name out there or getting her the materials that she needed to succeed. And she did succeed. She won her race, and we were able to break even while continuing to report all of our expenditures to the Board of Elections accurately.
Okay, thank you. I think probably the time is such that we might wrap it up with this one. Why is your background important to the board? What specific skills do you bring to the board? And do you have any time commitments that may interfere with board duties? Mr. Tatro?
Well, I'm not aware of any time commitments or constraints at this point in time. I think I've been very clear about my abilities that I can give to the board, and those are purely in the financial area. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to every resident in here, and it is my contention that the board to date and past boards have not done a particularly good job, and that we need to improve that, and that's my intention should I be elected to the board. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Richardson?
So actually, recently I've made a job change, and now I am working part-time remotely, so I have much more flexibility and time to give to the board and make it my top priority. In terms of what has prepared me for this role, I've been in many different leadership roles within the community. I've completed the FLDP leadership program. I have been an executive committee member of the Fluvanna Democrats. I have been a member at large of the UVA Virginia Women's Chorus, which I was a part of when I was in college. And through all of those roles, I've managed to learn how to listen to different voices who had different perspectives on how to get things done and find common ground. It taught me to be an active listener. And it also taught me to make shrewd decisions in terms of our budget as well as our goals for each year. So I feel that that has really prepared me for working with many different types of individuals and on behalf of the membership.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Murdoch.
Yeah, I think my two careers, one in managing hotels and one in managing homeowner associations, gives me a great deal of experience and background, both in financial management, in people management, in public relations. Um, and I think I can bring a great deal to the board. I have no real time constraints. Uh, Now and then my band requires me to give them some time, but it's usually not during business hours. So
Okay.
uh, no, I believe that all of the experience between the hotel and its associations, uh, and particularly in the area of financial management, will bring a lot to the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. Thank you. And Mr. Carter.
All four of us up here, when we turned in our petitions for validation, had to sign something that said we were aware of the scope of the work and the time commitment involved in being a member of the board. I researched and took very seriously before signing that pledge, and it's true today, as it was when we submitted our petitions together, Jenny and I. This will be my community priority. This will be the major thing that I do outside of my working life, with occasional musical obligations, just like my friend Mr. Murdoch. Um, I'm leery, though, of questions that seem to invite a kind of dramatic reading of one's CV. I mean, I have had success in academia, and from that, I would say critical thinking is important. I continue to value that. I've had big wins on high stakes political campaigns, but what I take from that is not, the win-loss column, but what I hope is a gift for empathy and listening to people, even people with whom I disagree about a lot. I recently did one stint as a chaplain intern at UVA Hospital. I'm going back for another one in the medium term. And when people are dying, or when my job is to comfort the family who is bereaved, they don't want ideology. In fact, they don't want my point of view at all. They want compassion, and they want to be listened to. And having that skill goes a lot farther in this world in terms of making a better place than the fanciest academic CV.
Thank you. Well, it is now time for the closing statements of up to 3 minutes by each candidate. So we'll begin with Mr. Tatro.
You were going to do that.
Well, reverse order, sir.
And I knew that. That's what I expected. I'll keep it short. There's four great candidates up here. It's your job to pick out which two you want. Good luck.
Mhm.
That's all I've got to say.
Okay. Ms. Richardson.
I want to thank you for your time and attention this evening. And I just want to let you know that what I bring to the board is a fresh perspective from the mother of young children who moved here specifically because it was a welcoming, safe, and fun place to raise a family. I also have an understanding that the lake continues to be just that, an attractive place for young residents and families to make a home and build a life as a bedroom community for folks that work in Charlottesville and Richmond, while also continuing to accommodate our older residents in their sunset years who wish to enjoy the lake, the golf course, and other amenities that drew them here in the first place. I also want to discuss that I have a vital ally in this race in Mateo Carter. I think that the two of us on the board will be exceptional. What I love about Mateo is he's always willing to lend a hand or an ear, and he's consistently looking for ways to improve the lives of his neighbors on a local, state, and national level. One of the things I like about Mateo is his ability to speak with anyone and find common ground, even those whose backgrounds and beliefs are completely opposite of his own. So I hope that you will consider us, and if I am not your candidate, I hope you will vote for Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murdoch.
I spent a good bit of time this evening speaking about finance. I also touched on community, and I think that one of the challenges that we have is the gaining trust amongst the community, and I think that that will be achieved through greater communication with on finances, other issues that face the board, um, and more community events, bringing people together. I spent a good deal of my time in community activities. I coordinate the music at the Fluvanna County Farmers Market, which has put me in touch with a number of musicians. Uh, we created the Lake Music Facebook page, which is now over 700 members, and we've got multiple musicians, and we promote hundreds of events there. We created the Summer Doc Concert series of, we now have 7 concerts this summer scheduled. And it's all about bringing community together through music, but there are other ways as well. And I think that the more we can get out, meet each other, meet our neighbors, and bring them together, we can gain trust, we can gain understanding of what the finances are all about here at the lake, and move forward in a more positive way. Um, I also think that continuity is really important. Every year we have a couple board members come on the board, a couple members go off, maybe 3, maybe 4. Um, and I've gone back through a lot of the documents on the website, and I've seen strategic plans that have been put together at various times. And I wonder what's happened to those plans. They seem to have a life of maybe 1 or 2 years, and then we need new board members, and there's a different direction. So I think somehow creating a tool that could keep the board moving in uh, uh, with some continuity is a real important goal for this board to look at.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Carter?
Thanks again, everyone, for coming, and thank you to my fellow forum panelists from whom I've learned a lot even this very evening. I admire all that each of you has done for the community. The last thing that I want to say about myself, both as candidate and as community member, is that I will be invested in these issues whether or not I win election to this board. One thing that is a peeve of mine is when someone makes a big blustery show of running for office, then they lose, and then they disappear from the scene as though they were in it more for the title and the power than actually make a difference. I'm not one of those people. If I am not successful, I will take the lesson, but still, and particularly on this aqua issue, which I began by saying I have a lot of appetite for, I will still remain involved and show up. Showing up is important. But I wanted to end by reconvening the Mutual Appreciation Society and saying a bit about my good friend Jenny, not just my friend, but my advocate. My ticket mate Jenny was the very first to speak out against Director Polonis's hateful messages. Jenny is my queer ally. I also respect her as a community organizer, a loving parent to her kids, and someone who is knowledgeable, skillfully knowledgeable about religious differences. In fact, as of just last month, Jenny is a Jewish woman whom the Unitarians trust to lead their biggest campaign this year. She is a kind person who feels deep joy when she imagines our lake community becoming more and more welcoming to people of all ages. Our son Isaac wears hand-me-downs from her son Asher. She came and heard me and my wife sing in a choral concert just a couple months ago. Just last weekend, we went to see her child perform in the Willy Wonka play, Go Empowered Players. We had Seder together. So the last thing I want to say is that one of us, 4 people sitting up here, is not like the other in a very fundamental way. If Jenny is voted in, she will be one of only 3 elected officials in all of the county. Gender representation matters. If you find that you cannot or will not check my name on the ballot. Please do the right thing for representation in this community and vote for my dear friend Jennifer Richardson. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carter. Well, this concludes the 2024 LMOA Board of Directors Election Forum. The broadcast group hopes that it has been helpful both to the candidates in articulating your views and to the community in arriving at informed voting decisions. We appreciate the excellent questions submitted by the residents and the splendid cooperation of LMOA Communications Director Marieke Henry. We particularly appreciate the cooperation and appearance of the Board of Candidates here this evening, and especially your willingness to give of yourselves by seeking to serve on LMOA's governing body. How about a round of applause for these folks? Morgan? Thank you. I think it's relatively safe to say that the LMOA Board of Directors is going to be in very good hands the next 3 years, no matter which two of you do manage to prevail. This forum will repeat on Channel 977 and also will be uploaded to YouTube, which is accessible by link from LMOA's own website, lmoa.org. Please tell your friends and neighbors, and for heaven's sakes out there, please do come out and vote. For the LMOA Broadcast Group, I'm Ron Kraus. Thank you and good evening.